Hello and welcome to Smaulgld.com. Today we're going to discuss the reason for the surge in the price of Bitcoin and Litecoin relative to the price increase of gold. It's very simple. It's about supply and demand. There's extremely limited supply and strong demand for Bitcoin and Litecoin relative to the supply that has boosted the price. So many people are thinking, look, what I'm going to go through has nothing to do with the relative merits of Bitcoin and Litecoin versus gold. We can go through those at a separate point. However, you have to assume that there is a demand for Bitcoin and Litecoin. You can even assume that there's nowhere near the number of people that are interested in Bitcoin and Litecoin as there are for gold. There's a 5,000-year history of gold. There are tens, maybe hundreds of millions of people who are interested in owning gold, either as jewelry or as an investment. And there's far fewer people interested in buying Bitcoin and Litecoin. Now, a lot of Bitcoiners will claim that, the adoption rate is so fast, so tremendous. It's not. There are definitely not 100 million people who own Bitcoin or Litecoin in the world. However, that does not prevent Bitcoin and Litecoin from rising dramatically faster than gold. And we're going to go through why. It's very simple. There's a much larger supply of gold than Bitcoin and Litecoin. And in addition, there are no paper derivatives for Bitcoin and Litecoin. For gold, we're going to see the numbers in a minute. But there's also, in addition to the physical supply of gold, there's a almost endless supply of additional gold for investment in the form of paper derivatives, futures contracts, and gold pools. And that further dilutes any upward price pressure that gold may have due to increased demand. It can be satisfied not just from the existing gold, physical gold, but by other financial instruments. You cannot do that with Litecoin and Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin is up nearly 700% over the last 12 months, Litecoin up 1,500%, and gold up about a modest 15%. Now, let's look at the numbers. There are about 7.5 billion people in the world. There's about 5.4 billion ounces of gold, and I used 170,000 tons to get that 5.4 billion ounces. So you can see there's less than an ounce of gold for each person. Let's go down to Bitcoin. Bitcoin, there's only 21 million Bitcoins they say will ever be mined, and I think about 16 million of those have been mined already. And Litecoin is 4 times the size of Bitcoin. 84 million will ever be mined, and we're at about 56 million that are outstanding right now to be bought. Also, Bitcoin's been lost probably in greater percentages than gold has, especially in the beginning when people didn't really value it much. It wasn't worth much. Same with Litecoin. But let's assume those numbers are hard and fast, that there are 5.4 billion ounces of gold, 21 million Bitcoin, and 84 million Litecoin eventually will be mined. Well, that shows you a dramatic difference. So for example, of the 5.4 billion ounces of gold, we've seen that there's at least 10 times that amount of paper gold. And again, only 21 million Bitcoin, 84 million Litecoin. Now, if you were to own 21 Bitcoin, today worth about $95,000, that would give you 1/1,000,000th of all the Bitcoin. If you had 84 Litecoin, you'd have 1/1,000,000th of all the Litecoin. In order to gain the same fraction of the world's gold, you would need 56 million ounces of gold, or 72 billion, in order to say that you had 1/1,000,000th of all the gold in the world. That's just of the physical gold. Multiply that by 10. You'd have to have $720 billion worth of gold to be able to say you have 1/1,000,000th of all the gold that's around and is traded. Because remember, gold trades in the hundreds of billions, if not trillions, each year. And Litecoin and Bitcoin don't do that. So Bitcoin and Litecoin don't need a mass amount of adherence, people wanting to buy it. They only need tens of millions of people that are interested and are willing to put small amounts towards it, because when they do, when that supply doesn't grow as more demand comes in, there's no game yet where they can figure out how to increase the supply to satisfy the incoming demand, other than raising, the price rises as you would see in a normal market. You don't see that in gold. You have the futures market, and the futures market acts to take a lot of the steam out of any price increase, because they can just in a sense, issue more gold via the paper contracts, which unfortunately does satisfy gold investors. They want exposure to the price. They don't want the gold. Now, one reason you also can't do that to Bitcoin and Litecoin is when you have it, you can spend it. Whereas if you own, and a lot of people, from what I understand, do take delivery, so to speak, of their Bitcoin and Litecoin, and they don't hold them on the exchanges, well, then they have it. There's no game that can be played. It's like if you were to take delivery of your stock certificates. Your broker couldn't hypothecate it, relend it out. Same with the gold. You take delivery. The problem with taking delivery of gold is what are you going to do with it? And then you risk losing it or having it stolen. But with the Bitcoin and Litecoin, if people take delivery of it, then they have it. And that supply is now out of the system unless they choose to sell it. And of course, they know it's there because if they go to spend it, it works. Whereas somebody who takes delivery of gold, they may take that out of the system, but there's still many people willing to buy gold, so to speak, and not take delivery of it. So that's really the reason we're having this big surge in Bitcoin and Litecoin. And again, this isn't investment advice. My theory is that if this continues, and if people continue to be interested and view Bitcoin and Litecoin as alternative assets, and large money views that, and they already do, well, the supply isn't going to get any bigger, and the demand, I would imagine, would only grow. So unless they can come up with a way to reverse the laws of supply and demand, I can't see, or they make it illegal, I can't see how, if demand continues to increase, the prices of Bitcoin and Litecoin won't go higher. Again, this isn't investment advice. This is just analysis. If you look at anything and you say, I see increased demand and I see stable supply, unless there's some dynamic that can change the laws of supply and demand, I don't see how it doesn't go higher. Now, what could make the demand go down, obviously, there's a lot of people who can say, well, wait a minute, what am I buying? I'm just buying a string of digits. However, put that aside. If there's enough people who believe that the string of digits have value and are willing to pay for them, and the supply doesn't increase, only one thing happens: the price goes higher. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me have your thoughts. Again, this was not meant to be an analysis of the relative merits of gold and silver and Bitcoin and Litecoin. It's just meant to show that if you assume that people are interested in investing in Bitcoin, Litecoin, and gold, that there's far less Bitcoin and Litecoin to invest in, and there's far more options, and there's far larger amount of ounces, both physically and in paper, to get your exposure to gold. Thank you very much for listening.